I moved a lot growing up. By the time freshman year of high school came around, I had moved 7 or so times, and was about a year and a half into my most recent move. I had found a pretty close group of friends in middle school, and we all went to high school together. I met him through one of those close friends. They were in a band together, and even though he was almost 4 years older than us, we welcomed him into our group. Sam was easily twice my size, tall and heavy-set, and originally kind of intimidating. I had a bad home life, and I spent as much time as I could at school, sometimes hanging around the school campus until 6 or 7 at night with this group of friends. 3 of us lived in the same direction, and we could walk the half-hour trip together until our paths split. One slightly cold evening, Sam offered to walk me home, since the others had gone home already. I just thought he was being a gentleman. He mentioned something from a previous move when he lived in California. He didn't walk a friend home and something horrible happened. He left it at that, and I let him walk me home. We got a lot closer after that. We bonded over both living in California and exchanged numbers. He would message me late into the night about his depression and self-harm, and I just wanted to help. A few months later, he tried asking me out. It was this big romantic gesture. He learned to play a Disney song on the ukulele and sang to me in front of the cafeteria. But I was already dating someone, and when I turned him down, he got angry. A freaky, quiet, twitchy kind of angry. I felt so bad. I started seeing him everywhere. We were still friends, we still hang out in groups, but I would pass him on the street walking somewhere, and a few minutes later, I'd see that he changed directions and had started to follow me. He would so-called walk me to classes by following me in passing periods at a distance. I started to minimize the group time we spent together, and he would follow me more. I had friends meet me at each class and walk me to my next one because I felt unsafe. He knew where I lived. Then he started to talk, not to me, but to mutual friends, about that one girl in California who we tried to walk home. At first, she just shared my name, some crazy coincidence. Then she had the same brown curly hair and blue eyes, and every time he rambled about her, she became more and more like me. And then he said what happened. Over literal weeks, this fantasy evolved. They were walking home and they were jumped by some guy with a knife. It was a robbery gone wrong on her birthday, January 24th, which happens to be my birthday, and she died horribly, and he couldn't react in time. She bled out in his arms. Sarah, who has brown curly hair, blue eyes, my name, my birthday, and sounds just like me, bled out in his arms. Each retelling added more and more detail, and this guy with his sick fantasy about my death would follow me around and knew where I lived. My boyfriend was abusive, mentally and physically, but I stayed as close to him as I could, whenever I could, because if the worst happened, I knew for sure he could throw a punch. I never felt safe at school, or in our little town walking home from school in the dark. One day at school, he had a breakdown, freaked out and ran out of the school in a panic. I was sent after him, and I found him curled up on the floor. I got closer. I knew about his anxiety and depression, and my safety aside, I wanted to make sure he was okay. It was then that he told me this horrifying story that I had been hearing from mutual friends with added details. We had been walking home from a concert in California. We passed a dark alley, and the homeless man came out with a rusty knife and asked for anything valuable. I fumbled for my phone. I didn't have anything else on me, and he thought I was calling the cops. He stabbed me once, twice, again and again, and Sam stood there, horrified. He saw red and grabbed a broken glass bottle near my body and attacked the homeless man. He killed him with his own knife. He told me he killed someone. My stalker killed someone. It didn't matter how messed up he was anymore. I didn't care if it was a fantasy or real. I didn't care how it would affect his mental health anymore. I wanted to go to the police. I was scared for my life. My friends convinced me to go to the school counselor first. That morning we went and told them everything. The stalking, the stories, how he admitted to murder, and that was the reason they moved from California. How I was afraid for my life and wanted to call the police. The counselor didn't take us seriously. She went to the principal, and the principal called Sam in to talk about the accusations. The principal then informed me that he did not think that Sam had any kind of mental illness, or that I was in any danger, and that was that. I lost faith in adults, gave up on going to the police. I stayed with my friend walking me in between classes, hiding behind my abusive boyfriend and looking behind me every step of my walk home that year. The counselors ended up gaslighting us to the point where this all feels like a fever dream now. And I would think it was made up if it wasn't for my journal entries, recording the events and my growing pain, and the similar stories from my friend group. Edit. Clarifying some confusion. I don't think anyone actually died in California. I think he's a pathological liar, and that he was so deep in a fantasy that he had convinced himself it was real. No, I wasn't physically hurt, but it was emotionally scarring, and the threat that he posed to me was 100% real. So Sam, let's not meet again. In high school, I had a stalker. Here's the story. I'll try to keep it concise, but there's a lot of information for sure. I was 16 and we met on Facebook. He went to a school nearby, and we decided to meet for a movie. We had a great time together and ended up dating. The first time that he came to my parents' house, he had an ankle monitor on for house arrest and wouldn't tell anyone why. That was red flag number 1. My parents obviously didn't want us to hang out, so we hung out at his place or around town at the YMCA camp. I was rebellious and naive. Things started to get weird when I noticed his family was pretty odd. One day we were together in his bedroom, having sex, and I saw his father looking through the blinds. I screamed and called him out, and his dad ran off. Stalker guy told me that his dad was just into redheads and liked to watch us, so this wasn't even the first time. I went to leave and his mom was doing crack in the kitchen, so I decided to break up. This is where it got bad. He started crying to me and told me that he's in cancer treatment and that's why he needs me. He doesn't have a long time to live, blah blah blah. I believed him and told him we could be friends. This is when the stalking started. He switched schools to my high school, but he never went to class. He would just stand outside of my classroom, looking inside, until it was passing period. When I would leave class, he wouldn't even address me. He would just follow about 10 to 15 feet behind me to my next period, and stand outside that classroom again. I was too intimidated to say something to him. He was 6'4" and a heavy-set guy, so I just let it happen for weeks. It started to progress to where he would follow me home every day. He would get on the same bus as me, despite living across town, and walk 10 to 15 feet behind me all the way to my house. He would stand outside, just staring up at the window, until around the time my parents got home, and then he would just leave. Finally, I told him to screw off and to leave me alone. I told him we could no longer be friends or acquaintances, and to forget about me. However, that escalated things way further. I started getting calls about 150 times a night. Half of them were him screaming death threats and in detailed torture methods that he wanted to do to me, and the other half were him singing me love songs that he wrote on his guitar. Every time I blocked his number, he seemed to just magically get a new one, and leave me more messages on that. I woke up one day to see that, overnight, he had left me one of those dancing/singing snowmen on my porch. He had stabbed it in the head, and the knife was still sticking out. He had covered it in his liquid deodorant that I had previously mentioned liking the smell of, and I noticed there was a hole where the little song recording device was. When I pressed the hand, it wasn't the regular Frosty the Snowman song that had played. It was his voice singing eerily, "I'm going to have you forever, I'm never going to let you be." I was done at this point and told my parents, who contacted the school. They suspended him, but he still waited at my bus stop every day and walked to my home with me. One day he ran at me like he was going to tackle me. When I tensed up for the impact, he stopped and hugged me. It wasn't a regular hug, it was like he was trying to crush me. I was 5'1" and about 90 pounds at the time, and he ended up cracking one of my ribs. I cried and he started crying too before running off. He left me a voicemail apologizing in song. This one night is the night I'll never forget, and it's the reason we got a restraining order and that my dad got a gun. I woke up one evening for no reason, just fully awake. I got up to go to my kitchen to get a glass of water to relax, and in the reflection on my fridge, I saw movement in my backyard. I couldn't see well because it was so dark outside, and there was light inside, so I went to the back sliding glass door to get a better look. When I got closer, I was met with the silhouette of a 6'4" man standing just outside the door. Stalker guy was in my backyard, under my room at 3 a.m. He was just staring at me. I yelled and my parents got up, but he was gone by the time my dad went outside. There's a patio right outside my bedroom window that goes all the way down to the ground, so it's possible he could have been on top of the patio looking directly into my bedroom window before. We got a restraining order granted shortly after that, and Stalker guy dropped out of school. I haven't seen him since in person, but every 6 months he makes a new Facebook account and tries to friend request me. I just block it and report it every time. Scary stuff. You ever heard of that myth that if you wake up in the middle of the night for no reason, there's likely someone looking at you? Well, maybe that's true. I don't know what he's doing now or where he went, but I don't care to know. Let's not meet ever again.